Blessings, family. This is the BioQuantum podcast, and I am so excited about our guest today. I have the honor to actually being able to come to Christian's home to record this with him. He's just about an hour from me, and so I took the journey down to Denver, and I know the journey.
Brave
So
the
I
traffic.
know, right? Well, welcome, Christian. You know you are one of my favorite people, and I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go into our topic today.
Okay, beautiful. Well, welcome everybody. And for the record, my name is Christian Minson, and I have been a holistic coach, a breathwork trainer, all around good guy for the last 18 years. I've been all around the world to share the work of breath flow, integrative breathing. I've been to some amazing places in Europe. Let's see, Moscow, Berlin, Bulgaria, London, Paris. I've been to Canada, the West Coast, and the Toronto area. I've been all over the United States, of course, Mexico, and then I had a 3-year stint in Costa Rica where I set up the breathwork program for a prestigious retreat called Rhythmia. Many of you may have heard Rhythmia, especially if you're into the plant medicine faction of people. And so, all to say that all around the world, I have shared this work, and there's one thing that we have in common, despite our culture, despite our religion, despite our politics, and that is that we all breathe.
Mm.
And unfortunately, the dark side of that is we all breathe dysfunctionally for the large part. Not all of us, but the vast majority of us do. Another facet about my background is that I was a monk for 10 years of my life. I lived and worked in a monastic order, and I bring that up in the context, especially of, well, of the topic today and with regards to breathwork, because the meditation techniques that we practiced on average of about 4.5 hours each day were really modified breathing techniques. We use the breath to draw the energy up and down the spine, to let go of body awareness and attain these higher states of consciousness that meditation promises. So all in all, I've had probably 28 plus years of experience working with the breath consciously in some way, shape, or form, and to really enhance life on multiple dimensions of our being, which is what the topic is today.
That is the topic. So, what we're going to talk about today is living a multidimensional life through the breath and how we can connect to the breath to tap into our higher selves, to receive guidance, to activate that 12-strand DNA, which we're so passionate about here at BioQuantum, and using it as a tool. That's, consciousness is a tool, the breath is a tool. We have all these amazing tools to ascend what limit to us, whatever that is. And everybody has their little passions on what we want to send beyond. And that's the way it should be. We should all be following those passions. But breath is, I can say, I never really did breath work. And I think I told you this before I went to, he had something at the Salt Caves here in Denver. It was my first actual breath work experience. And I fell in love, not just with Christian, but with breath work. So let's talk a little bit about that, about how we can use the breath to as an ascension tool, as a multidimensional tool.
Well, it's a great topic because just in my presentations about breathwork anyway, I really talk about the breath as the entry point into multiple dimensions of our being. The breath affects our lives on a physical level. Oh, gonna get some of those today. The breath affects our lives in an emotional level. And the breath can ultimately affect our lives on a spiritual level, which is a great fascination of mine, obviously having been a monk for 10 years. So just on that physical level, learning to breathe better is learning to bring more oxygen into our body. So at this level, we're working with the element oxygen, which is our number one energy source, right? All of our cells run on oxygen. In fact, if we want to get down to the nitty gritty, in the mitochondria of the cell is where the fuel, which is glucose, and oxygen, which is the catalyst, meet and create a chemical transformation, which produces ATP. And ATP is the fuel, the gasoline, if you will, that drives a cell. So if you, just like a car, in a car piston, it blows in gasoline and it blows in oxygen, and then a spark happens and that creates combustion. So the same thing is happening in our cell. Now, if we think about a car piston, if you don't put any oxygen in, you can pump that piston full of fuel and the spark can go, but there will be no combustion. Or if there's just a little bit of oxygen, there'll be as much combustion as that oxygen gets used up, but there'll be a lot of waste fuel. So once again, the same thing is happening in our cells. And here's where, excuse me, if we're not breathing properly, if we're not oxygenating ourselves well, then we are, when it gets to the cellular level, that combustion happening isn't, that we're not providing enough oxygen for the full efficiency of that combustion to happen, which means that we're not producing as much ATP, which means then the cell can only move sluggishly, right? It doesn't have the full power behind it to do what it needs to do. So, this is where then if it's an immune system cell, a white blood cell, right? Here, these are our frontline cells, so to speak, warding off against enemies. And so they're kind of sluggish. The enemies, the bacteria, the viruses, whatever, can overrun them, and we can suffer disease and dysfunction. So this is just purely on the physical level. If we go to the emotional level, our breath and our emotions have an intimate link, and we breathe differently with each emotion that we have. And if we really think about it, and if I just generalize, fear, anxiety, stress, those kind of emotions come with a more, what we would say, a shallow, more rapid breathing pattern, right? Which is really tied with our sympathetic nervous system, our fight and flight response. So there's a purpose for this. However, if we look at the emotion induces that breathing pattern, but the opposite is true too. The breathing pattern will induce that emotion. So when clients come to me and they're chronically stressed or chronically anxious, and there's no proverbial saber-toothed tiger lurking around the corner ready to pounce on them, right? Their life is relatively stable, but they're in this fits of anxiety and such. I look at their breath pattern, and more often than not, they've habituated themselves to a more shallow, rapid breathing pattern, which is constantly sending those signals to the brain. Be on high alert. Be ready to, be ready to run for your life or fight it out, right? So on the opposite side, love, peace, joy, those kind of emotions come with what I call a full, free, or relaxed and fluid breath pattern. And once again, the emotions induce those breath patterns. The breath pattern will induce those emotions. So this is really the pattern of the breath flow integrative breathing process, a full, free flowing breath. So that when we are feeling anxious, when we are feeling stressed, we're all feeling angry, sad, whatever, and we want to move out of those emotions, we can actually induce ourselves into more happiness or peace or groundedness by focusing on a full, free flowing breath pattern. So that's an emotional dimension. Finally, the spiritual dimension, which, having been a monk, once a monk, always a monk on some level, not that I live the lifestyle anymore, but the philosophy and the real, the spiritual practices. Here's where we've got to understand that beyond oxygen is actually energy. Science has even proven to most people's satisfaction that we're all energy, right? Everything is energy. It's all energy. And the Eastern philosophies would call that energy prana, our life force. And this is intelligent, creative, and activating energy. So it's the energy that's brought everything to life. And this prana is what is sustaining us ultimately, even beyond the oxygen. It is the prana that keeps us alive and keeps us going. So we can be depleted of this prana, even though prana is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. I use, and I see you got a bottle. Let's see. Your bottle is more than half full, but let's say you got a bottle that's half full and the cap's on. You throw it in the middle of the ocean, right? And the ocean's full of water, but this bottle is never going to get any more full than half full as long as that cap is on, right? So when we're thinking in terms of how can we be depleted of prana when it's everywhere, we are stopping ourselves from being able to bring it into our system. So the ancients, the sages of long ago, developed a series of practices called pranayama. Pranayama, you may have heard, especially if you've ever taken yoga or such, is really literally means life force control. Now, most people understand pranayama to be breathing exercises. And why is that? Because the sages understood that the easiest way to get abundant amounts of prana in is through our respiratory system. Oxygen carries that prana in high abundance. And so by working with breathing exercises, we can refill those pranic reserves.
Mhm.
So this is, in a nutshell, how breath work is really the foundation of all these dimensions of our being healthy on all those dimensions.
Oh, that's the word too, right? I was tapping into, and I've heard you talk about this before, and I've always had this question, and I want all of you out there to think about this as well. But when we start to do these higher frequency activations, especially working with the DMT codes, and if you guys have your copper card, you get it because I have to show you how to do code number 11 when he does his breathwork thing. It feels so different. But when I get to that frequency without even thinking about it, I stop breathing. And it's not that I am anxious, because obviously I'm not, but and maybe it's more of that launch off. I don't know. What do you call it? The launch off?
The launch phase.
The launch phase. My favorite part of breathwork. But I organically stop breathing. And that to me is a sign, and this is something I've been really playing in, and so I want to hear what you have to say, is that we actually have the ability to tap into a frequency or an energy on a DNA level to where we will get to a place where we have enough activated within our body where we won't breathe anymore, we won't eat anymore, we won't sleep anymore. All of these, we become bioquantum, right? And so I've been really sitting, this weekend was really intense. For that, I must have been preparing for our interview. And I actually started tapping in and seeing, okay, what would it be to just not breathe and have the energy of my cells take over without actually having to fill them with oxygen in order to go to a launch.
Mhm. So now you're really talking my language as a monk. The the whole spiritual path that I was on, and the meditation techniques, and the real philosophy, and for everyone's edification, uh, the order I was in was an Eastern philosophical order. So it was, based in the Indian philosophies of the Vedas and meditation techniques. And really, the whole purpose of these pranayamas, and working with the breath, is actually to get to the breathless state. Now, the breathless state is this state of suspended animation, so to speak, where the body is still alive, but we are, as a soul, disassociated from the body, thereby free. For the body in many ways is a ball and chain. It's a cage that our soul dwells in for a certain amount of time, until, for most of us, we pass on, and then we're liberated. Uh, for those in the know, those who practice these things intensely, they found that we could leave the body at will. And so this is what you're getting at here. The key to that is learning how to control the breath. And the control of the breath isn't a control like making something happen. The control is really about surrendering and allowing something to happen.
Okay, I have to interrupt here. I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I think it's time to turn that around. Is that we don't have to leave the body, and that we can actually use the body as the technology that is actually holding. Because right now we're experiencing 2 of 12 strands of DNA. And what I'm talking about is like, let's, with intention and or using codes or frequency, turn on consciousness and put our consciousness in this 12 DNA strand system. And then the body becomes something different. And we have the experience of what we would have leaving the body, but we're in the body. And I think that's the one thing, and this came up in my Luke Story interview, that all of these religions see the body as a ball and chain, but it literally has the most advanced technology that there is inside of every cell that we have, and that's our DNA, but we don't know how to operate it. And so that's, for me, my biggest passion is that I know that there's a lot we can do with the breath. It's just, where are we holding it and how are we holding it consciously, bring it into the DNA.
Well, I'd say we're speaking the same language basically, and there it really depends on levels of consciousness. That at a excuse me, at a certain level of consciousness, the body is a ball and chain, and then in fact, the Eastern philosophical uh, uh, what do you say treaties basically would say that it's a step-by-step process. The first step is to uh, be able to exit the body and find yourself as spirit, right? And so you're disassociated from the body at that time so that you can associate yourself as spirit. The next level, though, is to be able to make that connection to spirit and be firmly planted in the body. And part of, I'd say part of why I left the monastic order and then continued on with this kind of breath work was I noticed that our general trend was to try to, leave. And
Mm.
so we're not here, we're somewhere else. And I was like, I put it this way, we would like leave our house to go visit God at his house or her house or whatever we wanted to say, right? And I said, why not invite God into my house and then we can dwell here. And I think I actually think that's one of the most important parts of evolution in today's world is really to not deny the fact that we're here, whether we call this an illusion or whether, we call it all just energy, the fact that you're there and I'm here, like there is a certain reality to this. And we want to be able to play divinely with all this, right? Rather than denying it and saying that, this doesn't exist or this is evil or sinful or whatever it is, right?
Well, we always know that if we're judging, then we're not there. So easy, easy to say. I have to say, I had this experience over the weekend. Yeah, this was a weekend and a half. And when I was in that state where I kind of wasn't breathing, and I wasn't laying down, I was walking around and functioning and doing things. Like, I was actually vacuuming, and I started cleaning out the vacuum, and I was like, how long has it been since I had a breath? And instead of like interrupting it, I just kept going and kept having all these conscious thoughts of, like, isn't it so strange that we lose our hair, that we cats lose their hair, or that that we have to poop and pee and do all these weird things. And it was like, I was like almost looking at myself from this higher dimension of what we're becoming as human evolves, going, yeah, remember the day when we were, and it wasn't from a place of judgment. It was more just very strange. And I know we're going to get there someday.
Right on. That's it. We're working that way. Once again, uh, the philosophy I buy into is that we're all on the spiritual path, just some of us don't know it yet, right?
Mhm.
So in essence, our evolution is really to recognize, to realize our divinity and be able to transcend the limitations that we currently, have what the veil of those limitations over our divine eyes. But and once again, the one of the most basic things that I've found to be able to help us lift that veil is working with the breath and just getting an intimate relationship with it. And like any relationship, right? The more time you spend with that relationship, the generally the deeper it becomes and the more you know about whatever it is you're in relationship with. And since the breath is a primary function of our existence here, and for most of us we still need it. We can't live for long periods of time without it yet, right? It is a valuable endeavor to explore it and see how it can help us to actually ultimately live without it.
I would like to, this is a random kind of shift of topic, is using the breath for healing, because there's so many dimensions of healing, and I feel like that's the one thing that we all have something in our lives, whether it's something of the mind, of the body, of the spirit. That's what it is to ascend. It's being willing to see what's there and use some sort of a tool to bring it into a higher frequency. And there's so much information out there about what's happening with our healthcare system and all these wonderful things that hopefully will happen. But I just like to hear a little bit about maybe a personal story or just some things that maybe you're working with people of what is possible with the breath.
Yeah, well, again, what's possible? Physical healing is possible. Literally, I just had a workshop last night where people had asthma, and you know, I planted the seed in their consciousness that they could actually cure that asthma, that it's not not like a death sentence, so to speak, or a chronic condition that you have to have forever, like Western medicine will tell you a lot of times. And I can tell that to that person because I've had clients that have had asthma and now don't have it anymore or have had it reduced significantly, right? And a lot of it, when we think about our physical healing, a lot of it underlying that is the emotional dimension or even the spiritual dimension, which this was talking about a personal story, my own journey and what transitioned me from my monastic life into the secular life again was really a journey of discovering my own ability to express emotions. And so when we're holding on to emotional energy, which I'd, I really have to say is probably the human condition, because I don't know anybody who hasn't had some kind of experience where they haven't stuffed it down or they haven't, tried to circumvent the energy. Some of us more than others, but that may be traumas in our life. That just may be an unsavory experience that happened that, we either it was too overwhelming, so we didn't know how to handle the energy, so we held on to it, or we didn't like it, so we tried to sidestep it so the energy's still with us, or um any reason why we might have held on to this energy. But this so to hold energy is to be in resistance. All right. And so life and this prana, especially, is a constant flow. Energy moves. And if we stop energy from moving, we're stopping the natural flow of life. And so this is happening for many of us on an emotional level. And this was happening for me. I was very stuck emotionally. I grew up in a military family, and if you the one thing about the military, emotions are considered a liability, not an asset to your life. And to me, now my attitude is 180 degrees different. Emotions are not only an asset to our life, I believe they're a gateway into the spiritual dimension. If, in other words, if we don't have a healthy emotional relationship with our emotions, we can't really truly ascend to higher spiritual levels. It's kind of like, you if you want to go to the second floor, you have to go through the doorway of the first floor first, until you learn to levitate and just go straight to the second floor, which, once again, in the analogy, most of us don't know how to do yet. So we're really, and how I was, my monastic life led me to a point where the stuck emotions could no longer be held. And that was really my crisis moment, which at the time was really a crisis. In hindsight, it was the most perfect thing that happened, right? It was, I think, in many ways, what I spent those 10 years getting prepared for, ultimately to be able to, you know, finally have a relationship with my emotions. And it wasn't even the meditations that we're practicing at that time. It was one of my monk friends introduced me to a breath work very similar to what I teach now. And long story short, that's what cracked me open. That's what actually got in and accessed this stuck emotional energy. And part of the process of staying with this full free flowing breath is to activate that energy within us. And then it starts to come up to be expressed and to be actually released. And then once we get the flow going again, we can start to have a relationship with those emotional states, which now, I'm not only an advocate for happiness and peace and joy, but if sadness comes my way or anybody's way, I say invite it in, right? If anger comes in, I say invite it in. Fears, even, they all have a place. They all have a purpose to helping us evolve. They're kind of like messengers, and I say this in my workshop that you attended and all. If you get a couple letters in the mail, and one's from your friend, and another's from the electric company, right? And the one from your friend is like love or happiness. You open it up and you're reading it. Oh, I miss them so much. I wish, I'm jealous. They're on vacation, in the Bahamas, whatever. So you feel good after that letter. Then you pick up the letter from the electric company and you're like, eh. It's like either anger or disgust or whatever. What do? Normally we try to avoid those emotions. So you throw that letter in the garbage. Well, then 3 weeks later, you're having a dinner party and you've invited all the important people in your life. You're really set to impress here. And then all of a sudden the lights go out. The oven doesn't work. Everything's like, you're like, why me? Why in this moment? Well, why is because that letter that you threw away 3 weeks ago had a very important message in it. It said, pay this much money and we'll keep your lights on. Right. So here's like allowing the anger, allowing the disgust, allowing the emotion to be there so that you can really understand the reason it's there. These things don't just happen, emotions don't just come for no reason. So once you receive the message, the interesting thing is that just like a messenger, the emotion doesn't need to hang around anymore, and it usually leaves and a new state comes to you. But it requires you being able to be uh, uh, not be in resistance to that when it comes, but allow it to come and allow it to just keep on going.
I love that you say it's the messenger because that's also the way I see well, and not even just emotion, but feeling too, is that it's just there for information. And when we can see feelings or emotion as information, and we take that information and make a conscious choice around it, then there's no reason for it to hang out. Of course, when we hit more of that multidimensional lifestyle, a lot of times we can sense the shift before it actually hits the emotional body and are able to make the change before it even becomes an emotion, which is kind of cool. Like when we sensitize ourselves enough that we can start to really master even the emotional body.
And that I agree 100%. And that is, and to me, the process of staying in an intimate relationship with your breath is like your breath is your gateway to that higher consciousness, the intuitive sensibilities. That is really what we're talking about here, our access to our infinite consciousness. And but it's a step-by-step process. We don't go from kindergarten to doctoral degree in 1 year, right? We go through these steps of learning and learning and learning. And but there's where commitment is a big word. I'd say, commitment to me is one of the most spiritual things that we can talk about, because it's in a commitment to anything, whether it's a relationship, a job, a practice. It's the commitment to it that starts to unfold the evolution, right? And it's the non-commitment is when in any evolution, things are going to get rocky and rough, because in order to evolve, we have to move into new territory that we're unfamiliar with, that we're uncomfortable with, and until we master that and make it comfortable, right? So if we're not committed, as soon as we hit those rocky times, we go on to something else. And then so essentially what we're doing is just starting at ground zero again until, all right, maybe we're committed to that. And we go on but then we hit another rocky point and we go on to something else and something else. So that's, and I see that in society a lot these days, that, a lot of us are, in a stunted form of development because we keep running from one thing to the other rather than just staying with something. And it really, literally anything, as long as you commit to something, you will start to learn, higher level lessons.
Call it divine discipline, spiritual discipline. It is, it takes consciousness, and I think you're right. I think there is a little bit of that consuming, oh, I'll go to the next pretty penny because it'll be the one that I can commit to it and it'll be easy. But it's actually the uncomfortableness that we evolve in. If I have a saying, if you're not uncomfortable, you're doing it wrong. Because if you're uncomfortable, you're evolving.
Yeah, that's what that reminds me of a funny story. I left the monastic ashram. I had three things. One was to trust my intuition, which this move was the first really big, like, am I doing the right thing? And it came from an intuitive sense, yes, even though staying looked like it was the best thing on paper. Uh, Take personal responsibility for my happiness rather than blame everything else, but say that I'm really responsible for my state of being at all times. But the third one was to face my fears, right? And most of my fears I came to see were out here in the world, things to do with interactions here rather than inside the ashram. So I thought, all right, here I'm going to face my fears. I'm going to be like courageous and overcoming. And the joke on me was that facing your fears meant that you're in a constant state of fear because you're always facing them. Right? You're like dealing with them. They're right in front of you. So, it's funny, but that is the way through. Constantly being uncomfortable, right? Because you're being uncomfortable means you're out of your comfort zone. Being in your comfort zone means you're in the known, in the place that you already have mastered. So to grow isn't going to be in your comfort zone.
Exactly. I feel like there's this space in there, and then we're going to get to the process because I know we're getting out of time. So we'll definitely get to the process now. So grab your cup of cards. So there's the uncomfortable, there's the comfortable, and then there's the stillness. And sometimes the uncomfortable requires the stillness to get through. So that's what we're going to experience now with your process. So we'll let you take, and I won't do it so that I'm not obnoxiously breathing next to you.
Okay.
But I'll hold my copper card and I'm going to press on code 11. That's the
Yeah,
breath.
so you tell them, is that all you need to tell them?
Yep.
Code 11? Go to code 11. And so, once again, the stillness is the place that this breathwork ultimately leads us to. But the whole nature of integrative breathwork is that it's an activating process at first. We want to activate any unresolved energies within us so that we can purge them, we can let them go, we can integrate that energy. So then we can truly be in stillness. What I saw a lot again in the monastic order was people stuffed all that stuff down, including myself. And then we started to build this castle of stillness on top of that, right? And that castle looks great as long as there's no disturbances in the field. But as soon as, the storms of trials and tribulations come, all of a sudden the foundation that hasn't been dealt with causes that castle to crumble, right? So to me, it's a vital necessity to get to stillness to first activate this stuff and be able to release it. So in that process, as I mentioned, this is a full free flowing breath, and uh, we're basically going to be breathing from the belly all the way up into the chest. That's the fullness, So you want to feel the belly expand. You want to feel the chest expanding. You want to exhale and relax. The free part is to relax, to let go. We're not making the breath happen. In other words, even as I'm breathing full, it's not fullness to a point of tension, but it's a relaxed fullness. So the exhale, especially, we're just letting go, not forcing it out like yogic fire breath and not controlling it out. And that allows us to relax the whole breath. And then we want it to flow. We want it to be continuous, circular, rhythmic. We want it to have, and ideally, when we're practicing breath work, there's two things we do differently than everyday life. One is we breathe through the mouth, and two, we breathe at a faster pace. Both of these are designed. So somebody liked that. All right, so let's see if those come. It doesn't do it when you want it to do it, but it does. Oh, there we go. Then it doesn't. Then so again, full free flow. The flow is a connected circular rhythmic breath. We don't want to pause the breath unconsciously. The real crux of being in breathlessness is that we can step into that consciously. So it's going to go something like. And if you all want to just sort of lean back, be in a position to, you can all practice with me, basically, where your back is supported. Ideally, you're not, sitting up, because you want to be able to let go. And so if you're holding your posture straight, then you're not really, you are focusing on that on some level. So relax, filling up the belly, filling up the chest, and letting go. Okay, and I'm going to breathe like this, and I'm going to talk at the same time. Uh, Encourage you all to do it. We want to make sure that breath's in the belly all the way up to the chest, relaxing that exhale and keeping it connected, noticing. I'm not pausing between the inhale and the exhale. I'm just keeping a nice, consistent flow. That flow is faster than we normally breathe, okay? It is the oxygen, the prana that are the activating agents. So if we want an experience different than we have in everyday life, we have to breathe differently than we do in everyday life. We need to get abundant amounts of oxygen, more than we're used to. And then our state can shift, our state can change. And as you're breathing, then you might start feeling things, because as we start activating that energy, it starts to move. And the movement of energy feels like something. So that may feel like dizziness, that may feel like tingling. That tingling may start to get into your joints. You might feel your joints starting to do weird things. You might start to feel very heavy, or on the flip side, very light. All of this may feel weird and unfamiliar. Remember, uncomfortable even. That's a sign you're doing it right, a sign that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And you're activating this energy simply, the energy's been held in a container. We're finally opening that container and letting it out so it can just express. And emotions and energy aren't rocket science. They simply just need a space to move and to be expressed. Once they're expressed, they're no longer in you. So the energy that you might feel can be emotional as well. So you might feel a little tinge of sadness or a little agitation or a little anxiety. All this is not, the breath is not making you anxious. It's not making you sad. It's just exposing the sadness or the anxiety or whatever you're holding on to that's already in you, right? If you want it out of you, then you want to just keep doing this, presence that energy, let it express, let yourself cry, let yourself yell in anger, let yourself feel the emotion and the sensation. Just keep breathing. Then when we get to, you can do this just for 5 minutes each day, but you can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But as you reach the end, then we go into the launch, which is her favorite part. So we take a deep breath in and just hold and hold in a relaxed place. It's not a hold with tension. You're letting the body relax. You're turning off the mind and you're just in this still held space. No time, no space, no beingness, just pure potential, holding on as long as it's comfortable for you. And the more you can relax, the longer you will hold. It's just a natural thing. And you get to the point where many people tell me this. They're like, I didn't even feel the need to breathe. Finally, my mind kicked in and said, if you don't breathe, maybe you're going to die. And so they just breathe, but they didn't need to. So don't let that mind play tricks on you. Just stay in the still held space. And then when you naturally want to breathe in, take your next breath in through the nose and then out through the nose. The last minute or so, we just do some gentle nose breathing. Ideally, the exhale is longer than the inhale. We're kicking in the parasympathetic nervous system. We're bringing ourselves back into harmony, balance, well-being. And then when you're done, take that breath. You can open your eyes again and just feel for a moment anything that's different and anything, little energy in your hands. Is your heart feeling any fluttering? Anything going on in your gut? Does your body feel a little lighter? Of course, the longer we practice this, the deeper the experience becomes. And as you know, the session proper takes about an hour, but the homework that I give everybody straight out the gate, and now I'm giving to all you, is to do this practice for just 5 minutes each day. And it's a calibration practice. It's helping us to start to recalibrate our more dysfunctional patterns or the holding that we unconsciously are doing. And it's starting to give us a new sense of I can let go of this and it can be all right. And of course, if you start doing it and you feel like you need something deeper, you can come see me or see me virtually like this. But this will get you started in a good way.
So I have to say, if those of you are like, how could we do this virtually? I had a breathwork session with Christian virtually, and it was just as awesome as in person. And he knows this stuff, and he does kind of bring you through it. And then also, I guess the second favorite part for me after the launch is just the, what do you call it after when
The
you're
receiving
the
phase.
receiving
That is
phase?
the And that is that to me, I mean, launch a lot of people love because it really takes you there, but it's all in service to the receiving phase. At some point at the receiving phase, I even tell you, once you start breathing through the nose, you forget about focusing on the breath. You just focus on all the sensations, any downloads, intuitive insights, feelings of groundedness, feelings of well-being. This is what the activating of the breath is doing. So once again, we're bringing ourselves to that stillness, right? But we're going first through activating, clearing the closets. So there's no little monkeys that come out of the closet and try to tug on your consciousness when you finally are at that place of stillness.
Yeah, still, and I've had two amazing downloads with you doing like life changing. So I won't go into those because I want to open it up to gallery
Somebody put
and
already
look
some
at what
comment.
kind of questions we had. Um, so Kathy said, I just learned the breathing technique 2 weeks ago. We had another process yesterday. Awesome. And then Jennifer, let's see. This is great. And yes, longer is better. I have to go shortly. I would love to come to a guided class. I'm not far away from Denver. So when is your next guided
Yeah,
class?
beautiful. Yeah, I just did two guided classes this weekend. So I do a couple a month. Next month, there's one at a place called Sapa Spa in uh, South Denver. It's on the 11th of April, and then one at the Five-Star Salt Caves, which is where I just was yesterday and where you came to. That would be on the 20th of April. That's going to be on Easter Sunday. It's in the afternoon, late afternoon, 4 p.m. Easter Sunday, so you can still do all your Easter things. That one's definitely going to have an ascension oriented theme. So,
Oh,
so if you want to not only honor Christ, but ascend kind of like he did, come join us then. But you can find any of those and future offerings at my website, which is breathflow.com. So breathflow, just like this is, breathflow.com. And there you see my schedule of events in the Denver area, and then I travel around once in a while as well. So,
beautiful. Okay, so breathflow.com. And if anybody has any questions, I'm gonna open it up to questions. Let's see, with one experiencing pretty intense ringing.
all right, just in that, huh? Beautiful.
I notice a pattern with the technique. That is such an amazing experience, Christian. So, okay, Jody. I know Jody's a big breath work.
I'm addicted to breath, but anyway,
If there's
um,
anything to be addicted to, breath is a good.
yeah, I might have missed this because I moved away a little bit from the computer at points. But did I miss your do you have a preferred, like I feel like breathing in through my nose and releasing in my mouth for my physiology just works so well. I feel like I actually take more oxygen in through my nose and my mouth. But do you have any feeling about that just from your
Um,
direct experience?
sure. And, you know, ultimately everything is a very personal experience, right? So I have thoughts, I have techniques, I have a general guideline that I offer, and then it's really has to be modified with each individual, according to their true needs. That being said, I do like to say that, we can breathe in many different ways. And what tends to happen, I've seen it a lot, is that we learn one kind of technique of breathing, and then it's like, we try to apply that to everything, right? Where I say this a lot with yogic, the ujjayi breath, that breath that's sort of, you make this aspirated sound and then, you know, and then, so that's great for yogic practice, but, people go around sounding like Darth Vader in the office or, at a party and stuff. It's not meant to be the way we breathe all the time. It has a specific purpose for, bringing an even keelness to the breath, which is very important when you're trying to concentrate all wrapped up like a pretzel and balanced on one hand, right? It's so flexibility of function is what I profess here. So it's like, if it's great that you can breathe through the nose and exhale through the mouth, but you
Okay,
have
I'm gonna.
Oh, you just
up
muted
you
yourself.
muted yourself.
I don't think sorry. Am I good now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry. I think I didn't say, I use like all different from pranayama to, I'm talking about when I do a breath hold. When I specifically sit to do a breath hold, I played with in and out of the mouth, I played with them all. So I'm just really referring to that one. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like and also holding on the out breath. Like I'd rather do, like I'll do 4, 5, or 6 rounds where like I'm taking in 20 or 30 breaths, and it extends. The breath hold extends over time. I use pranayama. I do Kundalini almost daily, and there's so many different, sort of techniques in Kundalini. So I do mix up. So I don't think I was asking a general question about my breath work, but I studied with Wim Hof, and then I jumped to Joe Dispenza. Like there is, I was literally specifically just asking when I'm doing a breath hold, if you have a specific thought about that particular movement. Did I ask that the first, like,
When I had my session with him,
yeah.
he was like, okay, breathe in and you're gonna hold the breath. And I was like, oh hell no. So I breathed out and I held my breath at the end.
I breathe out and hold. I hold at the out breath, but I'm literally, when I do the breathing, first of all, I breathe in through my nose, the connected breathing, and I release out of my mouth. Do you, like, is that how you do it? I'm specifically, or do you not even pay any attention?
Yeah, again, so breath hold in the breath flow process comes after activating the breath for some time. We take a breath in and hold it. Now you can either breathe in and hold it at the top, you can exhale it all out and hold it at the bottom, but at that point,
I'm talking about the activation phase. I'm just talking about at the
Oh, yeah,
activation.
so the activation phase is in and out through the mouth as far as
Okay.
the techniques taught. There's where, though, if we get to, there's purpose for that. We're bringing in more oxygen and more prana, generally speaking, through the mouth. Now, I heard you say earlier you can get more oxygen through the nose. So if that's like, here's where, if that's truly the case, then that's going to serve you better than what I'm telling you to do. So you would do it in and out through the nose.
I was just curious, like yours is in and out through the mouth. Because I've worked with some teachers too, one-on-one, where they're like, it has to be in and out through the mouth. And that's really, so again, I'm probably not explaining it. So I'm like, does everyone feel that way? Like, I feel like I just didn't know if that was like really, if, I guess it's kind of a dumb question because my body's telling me what to do.
No
But
dumb questions. And again, I'm not there. I feel like anytime somebody says you have to do it this way, you should do it, you're supposed to do it, I take a few steps back immediately because they're telling me I know better than you and you don't know, so shut up and listen to me, right? Now, if you're coming to somebody and you're saying, please give me your wisdom, say, well, this is what I have to offer, take it or leave it, right? That's a different relationship. But, if we're ultimately, what I'm teaching ultimately, and why I feel like why breath is such an important aspect of life to me is it is self-empowerment, right? It's learning, the breath is your connection to your higher self. And ultimately, when you get in that connection, your higher self is telling you the truth, not somebody else like me telling you. Now, you like learning how to play a guitar or something, you might go to a teacher at first to get you started in an accelerated fashion, but eventually, that teacher should want to see you be able to learn on your own and master your craft, right? So the same way here with your breath work is really consciousness work. And whatever way you are getting in touch with that consciousness, I support.
I do appreciate that. Sorry, it took me a little while to zone in where I was going, but I feel like, yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you for the question.
Thank you, Jody. Does anybody else have a question before we got some things in the chat here? Could you explain the process? Okay, a process, just the 5 minute process. Is that what you mean?
Sure.
Okay. And then the other one is at some point when we held our breath, I felt a surge of emotion. Didn't understand for a while, and then it subsided. During the nose breathing at the end, I felt tingling sensation in my arms.
Beautiful.
I love
So,
that.
and then a surge of emotion. Here's where, again, it's so vital to me to allow, to just let yourself feel what's coming up. Don't be like, oh, this is anger, and I've been taught that anger's bad, and so back down it goes, right? Because that stuffed emotion, as the psychotherapist Sigmund Freud would say, that unexpressed emotion doesn't die. It just reemerges in darker and uglier ways. It's going to leak out and you're going to act weird or it's going to finally build and build and then just one day explode. And anger is one of those that we see, the news all over the place where people have done very tragic things as a result of that explosive anger finally coming out. To explain the technique again, real quick, which was the other question, full free flowing breath, full free flow. If you remember those three words, full. So we want to make sure that we're breathing from the belly, which is really the diaphragm working more vigorously. The more more we breathe and this is the engine, the muscle that we're using, it's going to make the belly puff out like a balloon. So we want to start from the belly, but we want to get it all the way up into the chest. So again, relaxed. You only fill up as full as you can stay relaxed. And over time, you'll be able to fill up more. Free, which is really emphasizing the relaxation, the effortlessness. Ultimately, we want the breath to start breathing you, where you're putting very little effort or no effort at all into the process. This is really, letting your ego self step out of the way and your higher self start to take control. All right. And then flow, the connected circular breath. In other words, we're not unconsciously pausing while we're in activating phase. We want to pause only once we get to the launch phase, because every revolution of that breath is creating, I like to imagine like we're building a charge in a battery. And that charge is what's going to launch us. If you've only filled that battery half full, you're only going to launch halfway into the stratosphere, right? If you fill it up full, you can really go far. And all I can say is farther's a lot cooler than halfway, at least from my experience. So.
And there was one other question that, and I think the answer is yes to this. If you do classes, but it was specifically Zoom classes, but I know you have an online course.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do classes online. I do classes in person, online once a month. Again, it will be on breathflow.com. It's called Transform and Transcend. It's my monthly introductory workshop. I work with people one-on-one online, and I do have a home study, home practice course called Inhale Life, which is a perfect entry into this whole work if you want to do it in the comfort of your own home. And it goes through 12 modules of lessons on exactly this full free flow and in all the detail. how to set up your breath space just right, what kind of tools will help you enhance the process. And then I've got a guided 5-minute session, so you can start using that to practice daily. And then I've got a guided full-length session that lasts about 50 minutes. So when you feel ready to start jumping into the longer sessions, you can do so. Now, I would caution people to jump into those longer sessions until they've had at least one or a few facilitated sessions. Not that breathwork is at all dangerous. I like to say nobody's ever died from breathing. On the contrary, most people die from not breathing, right? So, but if, like one of the listeners stated, all of a sudden a little bit of emotion sort of came up. And only that was even in just 5 minutes, right? So you may be going and all of a sudden you hit a pocket of some old trauma that, again, it's valuable to bring it up and release it. But if you're not used to the process, you might get a little flustered or even concerned and stop the process, which is about the worst thing you could do, because now you've brought it all up, but you haven't actually finished it off and released that energy. So once again, that's a very individual thing. Some people are just ready to go right into it. Others need a little hand holding before you go into that full length session. I'd say tune in to the type of person you are and choose accordingly. But that home study course is a great way to get started.
Okay, we'll do one more question, Fleur.
Oh, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for breathwork. I think it was really great. It was really different. I've done things with different types of breathwork before, but that really felt great. And I could really feel the kind of rhythm in the body. And that felt really good, and emotion coming out. Just two quick questions. One was asking about the salt. You were mentioning about the salt caves being a place where does this have a positive effect on breathing? I know there are you can buy salt lamps and little devices like asthma inhalers, salt thing. Are these valuable? Are these helpful?
Yeah, well, the salt caves definitely is designed to be a therapeutic environment. They actually pump microparticleized salt into the air and you're breathing it in. That's known to be antimicrobial, antibacterial. A lot of people have found extreme health benefits from breathing in this salt air. Now, it just so happens that I do this at the salt cave, and you get kind of a double whammy there. You get the effect of the breathwork itself, and you also get the effect of being in that salt cave. Salt lamps and things like that are like a micro version of that. There's not a lot of salt that's being emitted, but there is some, so it's more beneficial than not having it. But I couldn't say that, it probably is creating a therapeutic grade amount of salt in your environment for you.
Thank you. And the other thing was, how does the breath connect with the heart chakra? Is it that way you feel that comes through, and how this can be something that will help us with the new earth?
100%. Again, the breath is helping with every chakra. And when we go through the process, I'm actually presencing, the first bit, the belly breathing activates our lower chakras, our first, second, and third generally, right? And that's giving us more body awareness. And that's where oftentimes the sensation aspect of things will start to show up. Then, I start with just the belly when we're going into the longer session. And then when we move into the chest, we continue up the energy centers, the heart being the first there, which is our emotional gateway, right? So this is where now emotions start to come online. Our throat, which is expression of truth, and ultimately the third eye, we breathe energetically all the way up into that. And that starts to activate our intuitive sensibilities and, again, get us in tune with the higher us, so we can start to be guided unfailingly through navigating through this crazy world.
Thank you.
Okay, there's one more question. I just feel like it's important. And it was, when you do have the emotion come up, what is the guidance on what to do when that happens?
The guidance is simply express it, feel it, let yourself feel the emotion, but breathe, continue to breathe. That is the whole magic, right? There's and I'll perform a fake cry here to show you. So, I mean, most people, a lot of people, let's say, cry kind of like, right? Which you can just feel it's stuck. It's like the energy, you know, you're crying, but it's not moving. It's just staying in your system. So how I advise is to let that cry out on the exhale and take regular inhales. So it's a flushing sort of thing where we're letting the energy out of the sadness and we're flushing it with new abundant life force energy. We're flushing out the sadness. So it'd be something like, right? And however long it takes to let that emotion out. Other people will laugh out loud. It's funny how we suppress our happiness sometimes. So it's the same thing. It's just, you know, anger, frustrations, whatever emotion. It's important to recognize what we're doing is we're letting that energy out, and literally all emotions need is to be expressed. But then we're reinforcing that expression by bringing in fresh, new, neutral life force that then, you know, that then we can utilize for our higher aspirations, not just getting rid of old junk.
Thank you for that. Okay, so one more time. Okay, so he has online classes. He has his online class that you can buy and just do. He has online sessions. And then if you come to Denver, or maybe if you're traveling about, you can come to Denver and I'll meet you there and we'll do the self caves next month. All right. So breathflow.com.
Breathflow.com. That's right.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, thank you
This has
so
been
much.
amazing.
I really appreciate that you invited me in. I appreciate your community here, welcoming me like you did. Thank you so much for all the great questions and all the attentiveness. I hope that I'll see some of you somewhere along the line. One of the other places I do travel to a lot is Southern California. So if any of you are from that area, you might see me if you tune in to my website. One of the ways, I'll say one last thing, that if you want to stay in touch with me on my website is a subscribe to my newsletter. And I try to make my newsletter a very informative thing, as well as, you know, letting you know what things I've got coming up, but you know, inspirational as well.
Yeah.
So
He has a great newsletter. All right, everyone. Well, we are just sending you so much love, and yeah, go do your 5-minute breath work every day. Let's ascend together. Love you.
bye bye.